Hello, everybody. Well, first of all, thanks. I would like to thank Antoine, Florian, Jean-Baptiste for inviting me here to this presentation. It's a real privilege to be here with this fantastic environment. So, well, I came here to talk about different methodological approaches applied to wildfires. Well, yeah, I came from the University of Girona. And, well, as most of you know, there are a lot of number of natural disasters around the world, and in particular here in Europe. And also in Catalonia, in particularly also in the Valencian community, are regions where the number of natural disaster reports is very high. So in particular here, I will focus, as all of you, on wildfires, which is a kind of natural disaster. Here's some, my research topic is not only on wildfires, but I have some research papers about this topic. And here, the objective of this talk is taking into account the factors with greater influence. The main objective of this presentation is to model the occurrence of wildfires and to evaluate how they are distributed in space and time. And in particular, I will focus this presentation in 4 points. The first point is based on the objective of this first point is to analyze whether data follows a particular pattern or behaves randomly. The second point, or the second goal, wants to analyze the spatiotemporal patterns produced by those wildfires incidents by considering the influence of covariates on trends in the intensity of wildfire locations. The third point will focus on the modeling of the occurrence of large wildfires. And finally, and very briefly, I will talk about clustering. The idea is to try to explain how forest fires are grouped spatially and to characterize each of these groups, which I will call clusters, in terms of location and land cover. To deal with these objectives, I will use data. For the first 3 objectives, I will treat data from Catalonia. And for the last objective, I will focus on those wildfires occur in the Valencian community. In all the cases, we distinguish between the main 4 causes of wildfire ignition. I will focus on natural causes, negligence and accidents, intentional fires or arson, and unknown causes and rekindle. And also the covariates I will use are the hillshade, orientation, slope, land use, and also I will include altitude, the distance to urban areas, the distance to road and railroads, and also I will consider the minimum and the maximum temperature, the burn area, and the precipitation. So moving to the methodology, the methodology I will use in this presentation is mainly based on point processes, as the last presentation. Point processes are characterized because their location are the variables of interest. Then if we associate wildfires with their spatial coordinates, the latitude and the longitude of the center of the burn area or the place where they were detected, along with and we also know the time where they were detected, then we can associate the wildfires to a spatiotemporal stochastic process. Then point processes can be analyzed considering two different points of view. On one hand, we can treat each point individually, and then we can focus on traditional methodology. In this presentation, and according to the literature, we decided to use the Poisson model, the Thomas model, and the area interaction. On the other hand, if we treat points aggregated, then, and we also consider random effects, then we need to talk about mixed models. And in particular, if we also introduce the temporal component, then we need to talk about the spatiotemporal models. Then when deal with this kind of models, traditional methodology doesn't work properly. Then we need to work with a group of models which are more flexible, and in particular, to deal with this other approach, we'll base our methods on the log Gaussian Cox processes. And in particular, depending on the type of our data, we will need to apply a Poisson model or a zero-inflated Poisson, and also I will talk about Hartle models. And finally, the last objective I will focus on will be about clustering, and I will focus on a particular packages of R, which is called mclust. So let's talk to the first objective. For dealing with this first objective, I will focus on wildfires occur in Catalonia from 2004 to 2008. In this first part, the objective is to know the intensity of the wildfires, and we want to know if their behavior is random or they follow a particular pattern. To know this, we will base our decision in graphical tools. Then we consider the constant intensity Poisson process, which is referred to the simplest of all possible point processes, and has the K-Rippling function, which is equal to PR squared. Then the basic idea here is to compare our observed data to this function, and if the K function of our observed data is larger than PR squared, it means that our process is aggregated. The pattern follows an aggregated process, and if it is below, it means that our data follows a uniform process. So the idea here is just to see if our data, which is represented with this black line, goes below or up to the envelope, which is representing the complete spatial randomness, which is the one associated with this content intensity Poisson process. So discarding this completely spatial randomness, we can select some models to try to modelize our data. We started with the simplest one, discarding, of course, the homogeneous processes, as our variables, which are wildfires, are clearly not constant. We focus on the inhomogeneous Poisson process with covariates. This is the regression that we use, but here we are not interested in the covariates, but if our data, which is represented again by the black line, fits within the gray envelope, which means that the model fits properly our data. So here we can observe, here I just show data from 2006 and the cause, which is cause 3 is the intentional wildfires. And here I show just the cause 4. But we can see that the inhomogeneous Poisson process was not very good. It doesn't fit very good our data, as the black line goes out of the envelope. Discarding this first model, we focus on the Thomas model, which we can see that data fits better than the previous one. And also, we try the R interaction with, it's a kind of Gibbs process. So after testing all these models, we saw that R interaction was the one with better fits our data. Here we can observe the 5 years considered and also the 4 causes for each year. So after computing the conditional intensity of all fitted spatial point processes, then here we show only those maps corresponding to the best models in terms of goodness of fit. According to the natural causes, we can see that here we represent the relative risk, and we see that there is a lot of variability depending on the year that we analyze. Then when we build the maps for the negligence and accidents, we can see there's also some variability, but maybe less than when we treat natural causes. But the thing that we can observe here is that fires are mainly concentrated, or the highest risk of wildfires is mainly concentrated in the coast region and also around the urbanized areas. Here is Girona, Barcelona, Tarragona, Lleida are the main 4 cities of Catalonia. And a similar pattern is observed also with those wildfires occur by intention or arson. And with the 4 causes, well, the pattern is like this, is not very explicative. So after discarding this randomness and observing that wildfires vary over the time, this gave us the idea to include the time into our models. And as I mentioned before, the traditional methodology is not very useful in this case. So we decided to focus on a spatiotemporal log Gaussian Cox process model. Here we focus on also wildfires occurring in Catalonia, but we consider 15 years. So which was the idea here? Starting with a Gibbs point process, as before, and if we include the temporal component as well as random effects, then, as I said, we need to deal with a spatiotemporal point pattern approach. And in particular, we focus on this spatiotemporal log Gaussian Cox process model, which the intensity can be treated like this. This is a class of Cox process, which is a flexible class of spatial point processes. Then now, we don't deal more with each point individually, but we will consider the number of points in a cell. So we treat points aggregated. Then the good points of of dealing with the log Gaussian-Cox process is that it is an inhomogeneous Poisson process, which fits naturally within the Bayesian hierarchical modeling framework and is a latent Gaussian model, which means that we can deal with the INLA framework, which is the integrated nested Laplace approximation algorithm. And another positive point of dealing with this kind of models is that we can extend it by including covariates. So the main idea of the INLA framework, this algorithm with its called integrated nested Laplace approximation, is that from a Gaussian field which is characterized by a Matern covariance function, then we use an SPDE approach, the stochastic partial differential equation, which transforms the initial Gaussian field to a Gaussian Markov random field, which is discretely indexed and has very good computational properties. Then, when we work with a Bayesian inference, then it is possible that from a Gaussian Markov random field, we can apply the INLA algorithm as an alternative of the MCMC methods, giving rise computational advantages. So this is the idea of this other approach. Then methodologically, the problem here when we deal wildfires in an aggregate way is that the total intensity in each cell is not always easy to compute. Then we need to use an approximation that can be expressed in this way, and then we can use this GLM structure. Here is the regression that we will use in this approximation. Here I consider the heterogeneity. Here also the expected number of wildfires, which allow us to compute the relative risk, which is very useful to interpret then the results. Here we introduce the covariate, the special covariates, and we introduce also the random effects, which are the special component, the temporal component, and as we deal these two random effects as they were separated, we introduce also the spatiotemporal interaction. Then when we analyze this data, we observe that there were a lot of cells, particularly when we deal with natural causes wildfires, with a lot of number of zeros. And when we saw these results, then we decided that maybe a Poisson process was not good enough to deal with them. So we try to use zero inflated Poisson models with this a kind of model that treat in a different way zeros. That's why to model this data, we focus on three types of models, a Poisson and two kind of zero inflated Poisson models. Then, after computing the deviant information criterion, we decided which were the best models to fit our data. And here I show the first results. Here we can observe the relative risk according to each cause analyzed and each year. Here I just show some of them. So again, when observe the results from natural causes, we can observe a great variability between the different years analyzed. But mainly what we see is that the highest risk is more concentrated in the center of Catalonia, which were places more occupied by rural areas. On the other hand, when you observe negligence and accidents, wildfires, they are more focused, for example, here in Lleida, which is a capital city of Catalonia, and here also in the west. The intentional or arson wildfires, these are the ones which are a more particular pattern. As I mentioned before, wildfires occur by intention or that occur by arson. Arsonists, they mainly focus on urban areas and in the coastal line. Here again, Barcelona is here and Girona is in this point. So we observe that these kind of wildfires are concentrated in urban areas. And for the unknown causes and rekindle, there are not a specific pattern. So let's move to the third objective here, where we were interested in modelize large wildfires. So here we focus on large wildfires occurring in Catalonia between 1994 to 2011. Here we will consider a large fire, those that are bigger or larger than 50 hectares. Here we can observe all wildfires versus large wildfires, and here the large wildfires distinguishing by the four codes considered. So we can observe here that even that the large wildfires only represent a small percentage of all fires, they signify a high percentage of the burned area. That's why it's important to analyze this kind of wildfires. So here we were interested in to know which is the probability that a fire became a large wildfire, and then we were interested in characterize these large wildfires. So to deal with these objectives, we need to use an adapted two-part econometric model, and in particular, this is the Hardall model. This Hardall model is characterized because it has two different parts. So in the first part, we model the probability of a specific event happening, in this case, that a fire became a large wildfire. And in the second one, we characterize the number of large wildfires per spatial unit, which allow us to compute the relative risk of occurrence of large wildfires. Then this is the linear predictor that we will use, that is mainly the same than before. Here we also consider the spatial dependence, the temporal one, and the interaction between time and space. So when we treat this data for analyzing large wildfires, we realize that there are not large wildfires between wildfires occurred by natural causes. That's why we focus this third approach only on those wildfires occurred by negligence and accidents, and by intention or occurred by arsonists. The results from this first stage give us these results. Here we can observe the probability that the fire became a large wildfire in these two maps, and in the maps below we represent the standard deviation. So here we can observe where's the highest probability that fire can become a large wildfire. And the important thing is that in the case of intentional fires or arson, the standard deviation is very low. This means that this is a good approach of the probability of occurrence. And after doing the second stage of this Hurdle model, here we analyze the number of fires occurred in each cell. And again, we observe that this number is mainly in the coastal area and in the urban or the areas urbanized. And again, when we analyze the standard deviation, we observe that by those wildfires occurred by intention or arson, the standard deviation is very low. That means that the model fits very good those wildfires occurred by intention or occurred by arsonists. To finalize this talk, I would like to explain very briefly this cluster analysis. And for this last approach, I will focus on those wildfires occurring in the Community Valencian from this 5 year, from 2016 to 2020. Here is the representation of wildfires occurring in this area for each year and combining all the years together. And in this study, as I said before, we were concentrated in knowing how fires are distributed, but considering the type of land use. So the objectives here are twofold. First of all, we want to describe this distribution, and we want to see how forest fires were grouped in special clusters according to land cover. And the second objective is to characterize each cluster to explain the possible reasons to lead forest fires to be distributed in this way. The methodology used in this case is a type of clustering algorithm and is based on the use of finite Gaussian mixture models performed using these packages, which is called mclust. This Gaussian mixture model assumes a multivariate Gaussian distribution for each component given ellipsoidal clusters, and each cluster is modeled according to different Gaussian distribution models. Considering those in one dimension, we consider the E for equal variance on the V model for varying variances. When applying these models, which as I call is in our package, there are other R packages such as mixed tools or Flemix, but this mcluster package offers many functions to discover clustering. And it provides an integrated approach to finite mixture models. So, in fact, it provides a comprehensive strategy for clustering, and it's very easy to apply. After applying this model and using the big value for selecting the best model, then here we have the selected models, which are the ones with the lowest big value. Then we can observe which is the best model for each case, and also the number of cluster, which is the optimum number of cluster for each year, according to the big value. So the results is can be shown in these maps. Here we can observe how fires are distributed throughout the Valencian community and we can also visualize their spread. So the greater the diameter of the circular, the greater the dispersion of the emission. And here we can observe the different distribution according to each year. And finally, in order to see the distribution according to the land use, here we can observe, here I just show those wildfires occurred in 2018. Here we can observe here, we can see a cluster here which is represented another cluster, this another, here, the last one. So in this case, we have 8 clusters, and here we can see how they are distributed according to the land use. So mainly the first cluster, for example, is mainly characterized by coniferous forests and natural grasslands, or the fourth cluster is mainly characterized by fruit trees and berry plantations, or for example, the seventh is also characterized by coniferous forest. And this also represented here in this map, where forestry areas are represented in green, the rivers in blue, and the urban areas in purple. We can see more or less how they are distributed according to this land use and according to the terrain of the community Valencian. And the same we can see here in 2019. So the main conclusions of this presentation are that wildfires are not random in space or time, and so we are able to model them, as we saw in the first slides. The second conclusion is that the traditional methodology of spatial statistics, where the model that best fits the pattern of wildfire is the area interaction, has shown that there is variability in space and time. So this conclusion has made possible the application of a spatio-temporal methodology using mixed models. Also, we have seen that the spatio-temporal mixed model used to analyze the occurrence of wildfires in Catalonia was a new approach which allowed quantifying and assessing possible spatial relationship between the distribution of risk of ignition and causes. We have seen that large wildfires are not distributed to natural causes, and that the best model to analyze them is the Harder model. And finally, that the distribution of forest fires is related to the type of land on which they occur, and a clear pattern of forest fires clustered near river path is apparent. So this methodology can be useful in management decision making and planning, and so may contribute to the prevention and management of wildfires. So thank you very much for your attention.